the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. This is Petrie here with you for the next 3 hours. And of course, as usual, at midnight, it is the Talk Back hour. It is your chance to do just that, to talk back. It's the space that's been made available just for you. A whole hour, no guests, nothing, just you and me. And what I want to talk to you about, as this Mandelson story just keeps on going, and more revelations about Peter Mandelson. But more importantly, or just as importantly, what does this say about Keir Starmer? What does this say about the Labour government? I mean, this is actually more serious than anything else that you might think that Keir Starmer has messed up. This is a big, huge deal. Why was Mandelson picked? He was a politician, not just normally diplomats come from all the little helpers. They don't come from MPs. So he was a politician. So that was a very strange hiring. He also had a bit of a reputation before, so he's not exactly squeaky clean. Also, it was known that he was friends with a paedophile, right? That was known. It was known already that he'd had some form, we didn't know quite how far it went, some form of friendship or relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And yet, for some reason, yet to be disclosed, Keir Starmer picked him for the biggest diplomatic job in the world, to be the ambassador to the United States. Now, I want to know if it was because of his association with Epstein. It could have been. Who knows? It could have been. It could have been that he thought that meant he would be able to talk because he was friends with Epstein. Trump was friends with Epstein. Maybe they had things in common. Maybe he could talk. He could whisper into Trump's ear. I don't know. There was some reason that choice was made. Keir Starmer is saying he didn't have all the facts. So who kept all the facts from him? Was it Morgan McSweeney? He seems to not be able to breathe without Morgan McSweeney, his chief advisor. So what is going on, and what does it say about Keir Starmer? Do you think that he should resign over this? Is this a big enough problem? I mean, look, Peter Mandelson, the police are looking into it. We can't sort of usurp any sort of police investigation. But a lot of those emails display that Peter Mandelson was sharing some pretty sensitive financial information with Jeffrey Epstein. To what benefit that was, we don't know. But I assume there was some sort of benefit. It also looked like he was lobbying to protect bankers' bonuses at one point on behest of Jeffrey Epstein. Look, there's no question to me that Peter Mandelson has questions to answer, big questions to answer. And if he gets arrested and charged, if this goes to court and if he's found guilty, it could be lifetime prison for him. This is really, really serious, really serious. And he got to resign from the House of Lords, but he still keeps the title. Even if you resign, you still keep the title. So he's still Lord Mandelson, with all the privileges that come with that. So I want to know if you think this is serious enough now, that it has wounded Starmer and the Labour government so much that he's got no choice but to resign. And when you add in all the other stuff that Keir Starmer has gone back on or changed his mind on, is he just too weak at a time when we need strength? So that's what I want to talk to you about at midnight. I want to hear, particularly if you're a staunch Labour supporter, you've always been a Labour supporter, and you're looking now and thinking, yeah, this is probably it now. He's probably gone a bit too far. Look, the backbenchers have got so much power over Keir Starmer. They're the ones with Angela Rayner at the head, forcing him to release some of the details about the vetting process. He said no, he wasn't going to do that for national security reasons. Also, what kind of money did Peter Mandelson get paid when he left his job as ambassador, and should he pay that back? I mean, it seems to me, like we were saying yesterday, that these rich, powerful men, there are never consequences. And if there are consequences, they're never enough. You know, these people get to resign and keep their pensions. They get to do what they like. And how was he allowed to resign from the Labour Party? Surely a strong leader would have sacked him from the Labour Party. No, he was allowed to resign. He was given the privilege of resigning. So I want to know what you think, what you make of all of that, and should this scandal see Starmer resign? Is it time for Starmer to go? Or do you think, nah, hang on a minute, you know, maybe he didn't know. You can't know what you don't know. I can't believe, well, the fact that we all kind of knew, I think means that he should have known more. And maybe that was Morgan McSweeney's fault. Who knows? But we definitely need to have more insight into how this all happened. So please do give me a call. Let me know if you think it's time for Starmer to go, and should this be the end of him? So that is the big question at midnight. That's your talk back hour. So I'm really looking forward to talking to you about that. There's another huge story as well. Oh, John Boothman, by the way, will be with us at 11 o'clock to go through the papers, through the front pages, and he'll as political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about what should happen next with Keir Starmer and Peter Mandelson. We're also going to be talking about the Nuclear Weapons Pact. Now, this might be something you're thinking, well, what's that? I haven't heard about that. Well, it's a pact that was made between Russia and the US to prevent nuclear proliferation. It runs out tomorrow. And Donald Trump has said, well, if it expires, it expires. So I'm going to be asking why this matters and why it's so important for the safety of the world. It is a huge deal. So we'll be looking at that. We're also going to be looking at prison security. You'd think the one place in the country you could make secure would be a prison, but no, you can't. So we're going to be talking about why it is that drones seem to be just taking over. I don't know why they can't use a net. Why can't they use nets? Is that just too simple? So I'll be asking that question anyway and looking at prison security. But let's get back to that top story. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has faced the Commons today over Lord Mandelson. Starmer said that he changed plans, U-turned, on releasing files on Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador, and now sensitive information could be referred to a committee rather than being exempt. This follows a rebellion by Labour MPs and outspoken interventions from Angela Rayner and Dame Meg Hillier, as well as Tory leader Kemi Badenoch. Meanwhile, a series of emails between Mandelson and Epstein have emerged, including an exchange about strippers on the day that Epstein was released from prison. Don't forget why he was in prison for being a paedophile. Was released from prison in 2009. Well, joining me to discuss this is Jennifer Nadel, author, political commentator and co-founder of Compassion in Politics. Jennifer, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Just how damning is this whole Mandelson fiasco?
It's very damning indeed, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in real jeopardy. He admitted today in the House of Commons that he had known that Mandelson still had contact with Epstein. He'd known about the relationship with Epstein, and yet still he was appointed to this incredibly high position of being the ambassador to the United States of America. And so it brings up questions of integrity. It brings up questions of putting quick fixes and pragmatism above principle. And that's an allegation that has been made quite a few times since Prime Minister Starmer took office, that he doesn't put principle first, that he does what he thinks voters will like or what he thinks is most expedient rather than what the right thing is. And of course, underlining it all are the women who suffered at the hands of Epstein, and the fact that if someone who maintained a close relationship with him was appointed despite that relationship, what does it say about the level of concern in government for the rights of women and the rights of those victims of trafficking and prostitution? So a number of issues there. And of course, still more serious is the question as to what Mandelson was doing there. What happened to the evidence that he passed on to Epstein, and what Epstein did with that knowledge and with that price-sensitive information. So a lot of questions to be answered.
Which is the more damning? Is it that Lord Mandelson had this relationship with a known paedophile? I mean, there was no question that he knew, because the man had spent time in jail, and in fact Mandelson was coaching him on how to potentially get his crimes dropped and all of those things as well. Is that more damning, or is it the passing of that sensitive information?
Well, the passing of the sensitive information obviously reflects on Mandelson, but the appointment of Mandelson reflects on Starmer, on Starmer's government, in particular on Morgan McSweeney. So there are two separate issues here. First of all, there's the seeming betrayal by Mandelson of his country, the fact that he was in government advising the then Prime Minister Gordon Brown, whilst at the same time disclosing to Jeffrey Epstein information that was confidential and price sensitive, advising indeed JP Morgan on how to tackle the government, and then when Brown stood down, sending a message to Epstein saying he's gone. So that reflects on Mandelson, but for Starmer to appoint someone to this position, despite the fact he's been sacked twice before for improper conduct, despite the fact that he has a known friendship with a convicted paedophile, shows a lack of judgment. There is a context, of course. President Trump had just begun his second term, and there was a panic. The previous ambassador to Washington was known to have a very strong relationship with Trump, and that this was not going to be an easy time. We had the threat of tariffs, and from the government's point of view, it will have thought we need someone in Washington who can really handle this situation. And of course, Mandelson is renowned for his ability to manipulate, and he's been referred to as the Prince of Darkness because of his capacity to turn things around and because of the force of his networks. But that necessity didn't justify riding over the principles that Labour professes to stand for.
There is, Keir Starmer says, look, I was aware that he once had this friendship, but I wasn't aware of a lot of things about Lord Mandelson. I wasn't aware that the friendship had kept going. In fact, he even went so far as to say that during the vetting process, Mandelson lied. He lied to Keir Starmer. He lied to everybody else. Is that a good enough excuse, given that MI5 were warning Keir Starmer apparently about hiring Mandelson to this incredibly high position?
Well, if MI5 were warning about that, then that really begs even more questions. Of course, a lot of information is going to come out as a result of the disclosure that will flow from the government's commitment today following that debate in the House of Commons. So we are going to find out more evidence. But what we know for sure is that the government did not prioritise integrity, and it also only agreed to release these documents in the face of backbenchers' fury and possibly a rebellion by them that would have led to a government defeat. So this government came to power promising to clean up politics, promising a new era of integrity. If you remember, the previous government was the government of Partygate and numerous scandals, and Starmer was elected to clean up politics and said that he would. So to have him then appoint someone with dubious connections and a very poor track record in terms of integrity raises serious questions about his judgment. And it's just also not what we need in politics right now. Right now in politics, we need integrity. We need to see our politicians behaving as we want them to behave as proper leaders. We want them modeling the qualities that we want our politicians to have. We want them behaving in honest ways. We want them showing integrity. We want them being honest, and this flies in the face of that very real need. We have the lowest levels of voter trust in politicians. They come right at the bottom of the list of how poorly people trust figures in society, lower than journalists, even estate agents. Politicians are right at the very bottom, and at a moment like this, we need to have squeaky clean leadership that is beyond repute, and we haven't got that. And of course, we have the Hillsborough bill that is meant to be passing through Parliament. That would place a duty of candour on public servants so that they couldn't mislead the public. In fact, there would be a criminal offence of misleading the public. But that bill is suspended at the moment because the government has gone back on its commitment to the Hillsborough families to make sure that even the security services were obliged to be honest. So we have that kind of showpiece of the new era hanging in limbo. And we have the new independent ethics committee, which again was proclaimed with great fanfare, but it has no powers and still is subject to the Prime Minister's decision on whether or not to act on its recommendations. So now really is a time for Starmer to show clear leadership. It's no good talking about cleaning up politics if you then carry on with business as usual. And this isn't just about Starmer, it's about the whole reputation that politics has in this country at the moment and the need to restore that reputation. And I don't think personally that gentlemen's conventions and the current systems we have of holding politicians to account are enough. I think we need proper legally enforceable standards. And indeed, Compassion in Politics, the organisation I run, has been campaigning for a law that would say that if you're a politician and you deliberately deceive the public, you'll face prosecution in the same way as if you were a doctor or a car salesman who deliberately deceived, who fraudulently deceived the public. So we want to see the same standards that are applied to us in our daily lives applied to politicians, and a new era ushered in where standards are enforceable and where the guardrails to democracy are really firmly in place, because we've seen what's happening in America, what's unfolding there, how quickly democracy can be dismantled. And we need to make sure that our democracy here, our precious democracy, which is often called the mother of all parliaments that we have here, we need to make sure it's protected in the face of those who would ride roughshod over those conventions.
So when you talk about that a promise would be legally binding, are we talking about, you know, all the nonsense that we see before an election where they say, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and then as soon as they get into power, of course, it's completely gone and we're stuck for 5 years with somebody who promised something but didn't deliver? Are you talking about that level of holding politicians to account?
I don't think that we can hold politicians to account for statements of opinion and for the selling tactics that they use and the rhetoric. But what we can hold them to account for is misrepresenting the facts. The courts deal on a daily basis and call to account those who misrepresent the facts, who lie about what is real and what is not real. And that's where we can set the standards. So, yes, politicians will always state their intentions and try and persuade us to vote for them. That's one thing. But it's another thing when they deliberately and knowingly misrepresent hard facts to us, the electorate. And we want to see that becoming a criminal offence. We don't think you should gain election through fraud. And so we hope very much that the government will agree with us and accept our amendment to the Hillsborough Bill, which would mean that once the bill is passed, any politician, whether in the House of Lords or the House of Commons, who deliberately misleads the public could find themselves guilty of a criminal offence.
Crikey, I can't imagine them voting for that, Jennifer. I wish they would. Do you think that the one thing that Keir Starmer can do to show integrity over this woeful decision with Mandelson is to resign? Would that be a sign of integrity, or would that be going too far?
Well, it certainly would. He's not showing any sign of that happening soon. And of course, he's just battened down the hatches and prevented Andy Burnham, who's one of his clear competitors, from being selected as a candidate in the upcoming by-election. So Starmer seems pretty intent on holding on to his power, and I'm sure he will hold on to it for as long as possible until his position becomes untenable, if indeed it does. And of course, there are always events in politics. You know, what right now feels like a cliff edge for him could be superseded by events either on the global stage or things that are happening in the United States. So we don't know. What we do know is that this is the toughest corner that he has faced himself in, and that it's a corner of his own making.
Yeah.
And that if he is to survive it, he may limp on, but if he is really to survive it and turn things around, he needs to take some pretty decisive action to show integrity.
You say that he leads. It's very difficult to see him as a leader, though, isn't it, at the moment, with the power of the backbenchers. They've made him change his mind, U-turn, whatever you want to call it, several times. They seem to be quite a powerful lobby, and even though at the beginning he started to sack people who he didn't like, who spoke against him, now these backbenchers being led, it seems, by Angela Rayner, who has, we know, she wants the throne, they seem to be running the Labour Party now.
You say that, but I spend a lot of time in the House of Commons, and so many of those backbenchers are really depressed. They feel powerless. They don't feel they can challenge the government. There are so many moments when they disagree with what the government is doing in their name. There is so much despair on the backbenchers, you know, especially amongst the new MPs who were elected and were enthusiastic and stood on a ticket of really bringing about the change that Starmer had promised, and then they got to Parliament and discovered that there was no real change on offer. So yes, there are moments when the backbenchers force Starmer's hand, but there are many more moments when they don't, and they feel terribly conflicted, and they try to be loyal because they want their party to stay in power. And one of the reasons why they want their party to stay in power is that the alternative is reform. But at the moment, the government is doing everything it can to lose the support of its backbenchers by not leading from the values that most of them were elected on.
Finally, do you think that Keir Starmer will see out his term? Do you believe that'll happen? He does, but...
Such a difficult question. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't. I've never thought it, to be fair. I didn't think he would see it all the way through.
I think it's such a shame, because he had the nation. He had so many people voting for him that have never voted Labour in their lives. Yeah. And he had this opportunity to really unify the nation after the division that was caused by Brexit. Whatever side you're on, we don't want to live in a divided nation. No. And he seemed to offer so much hope, but he doesn't seem to be a natural leader. He doesn't have the presence. He doesn't have the charm. He doesn't reach people. He seems more of a technocrat who's very concerned by rules and detail, but doesn't have that bigger vision. And right now, we are all crying out for that bigger vision. We want to believe that change is possible. We want to believe that our nation can turn a corner. We want to believe that our economic circumstances can change, and that the communities we live in can be better serviced. And Starmer is not able to reach those communities or to communicate with them in a way that gives the majority of the population any hope. And as a result, it's hemorrhaging support to the far right and to reform in particular.
Yeah, it certainly is in interesting times. I just wish they weren't quite so interesting sometimes.
I agree. I agree.
It's very good to talk to you, Jennifer. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Jennifer Nadell there, author, political commentator and founder of Compassion in Politics. Can you imagine being able to hold politicians to account for deliberately deceiving us? That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. It is Talk, and it is Petrie. And coming up at midnight is your chance to talk back. The full hour just dedicated to you and your opinions, your stories, your views, anything you want to say. Particularly, well, as it breaks the law, obvs. But what I want to ask you about at midnight, given all of this Mandelson stuff, given everything that we're learning, and there's still more to come, right? We're at the foothills of the Epstein files. Do you think that this has put Keir Starmer in an untenable position? Because he was the one that, even knowing that Mandelson was friends with a paedophile, and he gave him the top job, and that would be enough for me if I knew somebody was friends with a paedophile. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd give them even a second of my time, let alone a really brilliant, well-paid, fantastic job. So, does this show a lack of integrity from our Prime Minister? Does it show a lack of caring about victims of such men? Look, we know in this country we've had those rape gangs. We've had, even rape as a crime in this country is woefully dealt with in the courts. Young girls being part of those rape gangs. When he was in charge of the CPS, the unwillingness to do a full, a deep dive into what is going on with those rape gangs, an inquiry, all of those things. What does that tell you about the man? And does it tell you that integrity isn't there? That he obviously thought that Mandelson could be the whisperer in Trump's ear for some reason. And he was faced with, but he wasn't faced with difficult choices. There would be other people he could put into the diplomatic job. Why Peter Mandelson? I still want to know. I want the answer to that question. Why did you give it to him? What was your thinking? What was the reason? Why? Just why? And do you think that actually this now is enough? This is a line that has been crossed with Keir Starmer. Should he go? Should he show some integrity and resign? Should he go? If you're a staunch Labour supporter, I'd love to hear what you think. Not to argue with you, but genuinely to hear what you think. If you think that Keir Starmer can really outlive this appalling scandal. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. You can message me as well by putting the word talk and then your message to 87222. Going to be talking prisons next.
Across the UK. on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And you would have thought, well, I've always thought, that the one place in this country that you could keep secure would be a prison, right? Specifically built, you would imagine, for that very purpose. Nobody escapes, nobody gets in. Should be fairly easy, right? Walls, bars, prison guards. But no. A new National Audit Office report found that the prison service and the government have been too slow to respond to urgent threats and have significantly underspent on crucial security measures. A backlog on maintenance and significant budget underspends on security measures have left prisons vulnerable, with critical security systems left unrepaired for extended periods of time. That's allowed drugs and very serious weapons to get into prisons, like machetes, flick knives, very, very serious weapons. It is because of drones. There are now gangs that, that are professional drone flyers, if you like, that they're making a fortune flying in drugs and weapons into prisons. Specialist gangs now. Meanwhile, the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy has told MPs that the most dangerous prisoners will be held in Supermax-style units, similar to those in US jails, and he would consider drawing up legislation to stop prisoners from using human rights laws to challenge tougher conditions in prisons, such as we've seen recently with solitary confinement. Well, joining me now to discuss this is John Woodman, who is a former senior prison manager. John, thank you very much indeed for joining me. As I was saying there, we would all imagine that a prison would be a pretty secure place. Why are they not?
On the whole, prisons are pretty secure places. We only hear about it when it goes horribly wrong. However, saying that, I retired a number of years ago when it was only just starting to go downhill. And you could quite rightly argue that lack of investment, it's a very old estate. Some of the buildings are Victorian, they're crumbling. The whole staff dynamic has changed quite dramatically over recent years as well. Prison officers going onto landings now at a very young age and not as experienced and not perhaps with the same sort of life experiences as officers used to have. And so rapport with prisoners have declined. Time out of cell, purposeful activity has declined. Sometimes prisoners are locked up for 23 hours a day. So in terms of escape, I think we can all understand how prisoners seem to need to be able to occupy their time. And sadly, that might be by getting up to no good. So I think the longer we can get prisoners out of cell and focus on rehabilitation, then the likelihood of drugs coming into prison are going to decrease. I
mean, it seems, though, that prisons or the system have just given up, in terms of the fact that there are now drug-free areas in prisons. That sounds to me like a system that has just given up. There's an acceptance of a certain number of drugs in prisons, so much so that there has to be an area now dedicated for people who don't want to be around drugs.
There have always been specialist wings, drug-free wings, etc., for as far back as I can remember.
But why? If they should all be drug-free wings, shouldn't they?
I believe everybody should be drug-free in prison. And indeed, you could argue, and I've heard the argument made several times, that people have gone into prison and come out having never taken a drug in their life and come out with a drug habit.
Yeah.
And I've heard various reasons for that. One was introducing mandatory drug testing, where cannabis was the preferred drug of choice back in the old days, stays in the system for a long, long time, weeks perhaps, and so gets picked up on blood tests. Harder drugs like heroin, spice, etc. can wash out the system very quickly. So if you know you've got any inkling of a blood test coming up, you can wash the system out and successfully pass the drug test. And there's also the criminality involved. There's a massive amount of money to be made in drugs as well. So certainly my philosophy would be to get prisoners out of cell, focus on reducing reoffending, concentrate on rehabilitation, and hopefully take away the desire and the need for them to seek alternative ways of occupying their time.
But is there
we need to invest in prison staff, in prison training. For example, we train prisoners up to be mentors to other prisoners. I think prison officers should be trained to be mentors as well. So we can offer a whole lot more than just locks, bolts and bars and locking them up.
But is there a certain level of acceptance of drugs in prison? Is it easier to manage stoned inmates?
In my experience, there was never any kind of acceptance, in fact, zero tolerance towards drugs. But I was lucky enough to be in a life establishment. It was a progressive jail. People were there because they wanted to move progressively through their sentence. I think where we're looking at containing, or rather warehousing, prisoners now, I think that brings a whole different set of problems with it.
Let's just talk about the drones. Why is it so impossible to stop these things? I mean, they're not small. You can see them. I don't understand how they're, again, it just seems, oh, well, there's a drone with drugs or a machete. Why are they so difficult to stop?
Again, I don't come from a security background, but my view on it is that it's down to staffing levels. So, for example, I can remember when we had mobile phone detectors, and at night you could detect roughly the area where a mobile phone was being used, but because we had minimum staffing levels, we couldn't actually spin that cell at that time until the shift came on in the morning, where you had your dedicated search teams who could then be tasked with targeting that area, by which time the phone would have gone out, swung on lines, probably off to another wing, certainly another landing. So I think it's staff and vigilance. I'm sure there are ways of taking out drones if we had the resources to actually employ to do that.
Talking of resources, why the significant underspend as well? I mean, in your days working in prisons, surely it would have been, you know, if there's money knocking around, it can always be used. You said there's not been enough investment in prisons, but why such a massive underspend?
I put it down to successive governments, really. I was lucky enough to be around when they created a specialist role called Head of Learning and Skills that I took up. We were responsible for significant budgets, putting them into education, particularly in basic skills and vocational training. You could see that was beginning to make a difference. But of course, the change in government who wants to be tough on crime, and the whole criminal justice system is in crisis, from the courts to probation to prisons. And it's because of lack of investment over decades, if I may say. And I know of many officers who left before their time because of the way that it was going. And sadly, we've lost so much talent over the last sort of 10, 15, 20 years that it's very hard to crawl back up to the standard of staffing that we had once upon a time.
What about these so-called supermax wings that David Lammy has been talking about now, or units? I mean, as you're saying, that a lot of prisoners benefit from rehabilitation, from learning in prisons. I think you'd have to be crazy not to see that was the case. But there may be those, of course, for whom there is no hope. And these supermax units is, I think, what they're talking about, people who won't be able to be rehabilitated. Do you have an issue with tougher prison sentences for people like that?
I think we already have the equivalent of very highly secure units within jails, and off the top of my head, I'm thinking Belmarsh, for example. So a need for specialist supermax prisons, I don't think really exists. We do have a crisis within. I saw a massive change when they introduced the excuse me, the indeterminate life sentence for prisoners who hadn't actually taken a life but were deemed not suitable, were deemed that they should be on a life sentence with a low tariff so that they could be on license for the rest of the period when they were let out. And I think we haven't thought through a lot of our policies, I don't think, as a government. We've just been putting plasters on a wound and sort of lurching from crisis to crisis, and building supermax jails isn't the answer.
Good to speak to you, John. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening. John Woodman there, former senior prison manager. Stay where you are. We're going to be talking about the fact that the nuclear pact runs out tomorrow.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good evening. This is Talk and it's Petrie. And just to let you know, to remind you that John Boothman will be joining us at the top of the hour to go through the newspapers for tomorrow. Another thing that is happening tomorrow, aside from the newspapers, is that the last Russia and US nuclear arms control treaty, known as START, is set to expire, removing the last remaining mutual limits on the proliferation of nuclear arsenals. Yeah, you heard me say that. There's been a programme, a treaty, to make sure that each nuclear power doesn't exceed certain limits. They are 1,500 bombs and 800 delivery vehicles. In other words, bombers, right? Or whatever it is. Those were the things put in place. In 2023, Russia decided that nobody could go and, that the US couldn't go and have a look and see what they were doing with nuclear weapons, no inspections at all, because of the US support of Ukraine in the Ukraine-Russia war. The treaty was signed in 2010 by US President Barack Obama and the then President Dmitry Medvedev, who served, if you remember, that a single term and was an ally of Vladimir Putin. Its aim was to set limits on strategic nuclear weapons, capped the number of deployed strategic warheads and included on-site inspections on each side. Like I said, though, in 2023, Putin suspended his country's participation. Now, last September, Putin did offer a year's extension to the Nuclear Proliferation Pact. Nobody from America has responded. And Donald Trump, in fact, has already said recently, well, if it expires, it expires. We'll just do a better deal. Now, better deals would be great if there was an extension, but if there's nothing there, nothing at all, how dangerous could that possibly be for the globe, given, look at the mess we're in already, right? Well, joining me now is Elliot Wilson, writer, historian and senior fellow for national security at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. Thank you for joining me. I'm amazed this hasn't got more coverage than it has around the world, to be perfectly honest with you, Elliot. I'm that age where I think that these things are a good thing to have, a non-proliferation pact. How dangerous is this right now?
I think there is a real danger. It may not be very high in percentage terms, but the problem with nuclear weapons, of course, is if you make one mistake, that could be it. We talk about how many hundreds or thousands of warheads that each party is maintaining. We're talking about catastrophic destructive power beyond anything we can imagine just in one warhead. So the numbers almost become irrelevant. Yeah. I think the doomsday clock, which is the Association of American Scientists calculation of how dangerous the world is and how close we are to some kind of nuclear engagement, is at 87 seconds to midnight at the moment, I think, which is the highest. It's the closest to midnight it's ever been since 1947. So all through the Cold War, they were predicting a nuclear war was less likely than it is now. And I think there is, even if it's a low-level danger, it exists. And as I say, there's no small nuclear war. We know that. It's destructive to probably an existential level. And we have actors in lead parts in various countries who are not as stable or predictable as we would like them to be, to put it mildly.
So with Russia, I mean, look, we don't know what they're doing now because we can't inspect what they're doing. There is a possibility with this running out that he could do lots of things with nuclear weapons that we just don't know about, right? That's the concern.
It's one concern, certainly. I think the bigger concern is the level of unpredictability and the sort of tension that there's been between Russia and the West over Ukraine, and Vladimir Putin talking about using, admittedly what he was talking about was tactical nuclear weapons, which are smaller, but again still nuclear weapons. And I think the real problem is that we don't know what would happen if there were an engagement on a small scale and how it escalates. The whole problem with nuclear weapons is this has never been done. Nuclear weapons have only ever been used twice in 1945, and so this is all theoretical. We've got academics and politicians and civil servants who spend their whole lives talking about deterrence theory, but it's all theory. We don't know what happens if the crunch comes, and it's very difficult to predict. It's very difficult to see a less than devastating outcome. And Vladimir Putin is a brinksman. He knows that he can push and push and push. We've seen some of his red lines not be crossed, and he does nothing. But on the other side, you've got Donald Trump, who I suspect has a much less grasp of exactly how bad this is, and certainly than Putin does.
This pact, though, that runs out tomorrow, looking at it, it is between the US and Russia. How valuable is that pact in reality when you've got North Korea and you've got certainly China who have refused to be part of any non-proliferation agreement?
I think you're right, there's an extent to which it is sort of symbolic. It's some sort of act of saying we are concerned about this and we both agree that this is a real danger. But I mean, North Korea is the real rogue agent here. It could do anything at any point because we know so little about their intentions and so little about their leadership's sort of mentality about the world. China has said it won't join any kind of limitation talks until it's vastly expanded its warhead supply, and Trump is saying that he wants to include the Chinese in any deal. So you've got that to kind of sit back and look at as reasons not to do anything. I think the prospect of getting a new deal between the US and Russia at the moment is very slender. How much that in itself matters is an open question, because ultimately these things are not enforceable, and if you break the treaty, nobody's going to be around to tell you off afterwards. And there are limits to inspection and things like that. We saw the limits of weapons inspectors with the Iraq War back in 2003. But I think it's more sort of stepping away from this and saying we don't need any deal or any treaty. That, I think, in itself raises the tensions and raises the stakes. And with nuclear weapons, that's never a good idea.
I mean, a treaty such as this, as we've just said, without North Korea, without China, without the inspections in those countries, without limitations on those countries, and without agreement in those countries. But it is a symbol, if you like, of MAD, isn't it? Mutually assured destruction, a symbol of trust. Look, we won't press the button if you don't press the button.
Yes.
And is that what you mean by not having this in place, that implied trust is no longer there?
Yes, that's right. I think it's, if we have at least some kind of agreement, however symbolic, however impossible to enforce, you're at least saying that you're kind of committed to the idea of reduction of nuclear weapons, and you're kind of committed to the idea of not destroying the planet and humanity. And I think the simple act of stepping away from that and saying we don't need that anymore, or we're not concerned about that, or we don't trust our interlocutors and the co-signatories, I think that does something damaging, and it does something more damaging than not having it at all. It's the stepping back from it, having had it, to say that's now run out, it's not appropriate, or it's not needed anymore, or we won't sign because the world has changed. That, I think, is it just escalates the tension in a way that really isn't helpful.
And does it therefore give permission to, in a sense, to other countries to say, well, if Russia and America are no longer trusting of each other, we might as well start planning nuclear weapons ourselves?
It makes it more difficult. I mean, ultimately, countries, when they look at nuclear capabilities, whether they have them or whether they're developing them or whether they want them, they will be guided by national interests and what's possible economically and militarily and technologically. But this doesn't help the rest of what we call the West or the First World or whatever you want to call it. It's very difficult for America or Britain or France to say to another country, you should not have these weapons, if at the same time America and Russia are saying, well, we did have limitations on this, but now it's a free-for-all. Because other countries will say, well, what makes you special? What makes you able to have these things that we can't, when we're as unable to defend ourselves necessarily as you are? And the point's been raised that if Ukraine had retained the nuclear weapons it inherited from the Soviet Union, it might not have been invaded by Russia. So it makes the moral case more difficult, even though the moral case isn't the one that swings it.
And there does seem to be more talk now about nuclear weapons than there has been for some time, and given the state of the world and allies shifting and friendships not being there anymore, it's easy to see why. But when you've got countries like Sweden calling for conversations with Britain and with France, of course, the two European powers with nuclear weapons, and looking to expand that and looking to provide a nuclear umbrella over Europe. Does that concern you as well, that these talks are even going on, that rather than saying, look, the whole world shouldn't have these things, we're now discussing them in a much more serious way?
That concerns me slightly, but what I find much more concerning is that the response of the West to Vladimir Putin's threats of tactical nuclear weapons seems to have been an unquestioning acceptance that we need to have more tactical nuclear weapons. I mean, we have them, of course, although Britain gave our tactical nuclear weapons away in the 1990s, but we're now reacquiring the capability at least to participate in NATO's stockpile of them, though they're American-owned. But I think this idea that, because Russia has threatened to use small nuclear weapons on a smaller scale, we automatically have to match their capability is a very dangerous assumption to make, because for me the threshold is not between tactical and strategic nuclear weapons, it's between nuclear weapons and conventional weapons. And I think once you've crossed that nuclear threshold, of course, we don't know, as I say, because this hasn't happened for 80 years since the weapons were first invented. We don't know what happens when you cross that threshold. Does it mean it's a free-for-all? Does it mean that people stand back slightly and hesitate before the worst happens? And I think this idea that suddenly the West should rush to re-equip itself, firstly, it's a sort of reversal of all the direction of travel that we've had for 50 years, which is to reduce the number of weapons, to keep a minimal deterrent. But also it seems to me just to up the ante by saying, well, if Russia's going to be playing with their tactical nuclear weapons, everybody should have them. I don't think that's necessarily the most appropriate way to respond.
And very briefly, if you can, does it matter when new weapons are coming on stream all the time anyway that are just as powerful?
Maybe 80% it doesn't matter, but that 20% could kill everyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in a sense, yes, it does.
Yes, it does matter. I wish there weren't any of these things at all. Elliot, thank you very much indeed. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Elliot Wilson there, writer, historian and senior fellow for the national security of the Coalition for Global Prosperity. Right, stay where you are, because we're going to be looking at the front pages for the newspapers next. And by we, I mean myself and John Boothman. Be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock, and coming up at midnight it is the Talkback Hour. It is your chance to do exactly that, and that is to talk back. And with this story about Peter Mandelson, and like I said, we're at the foothills of this as well, I'm sure, getting more and more of an embarrassment to the Prime Minister. Do you think that it is time for him to resign? Should he resign over what appears to be a complete lack of integrity? Is it time for him to go? And do you think, just as my guest at the top of the show said, that MPs should be held legally accountable when they lie to us? That'll make their conversations really short, wouldn't it? I don't think we'll hear from them. But when they actually lie to us, do you think that we should be able to hold them to account? I do. I really do. I'm sick and tired of not being given the full picture or being lied to. But even worse is Keir Starmer here, who is claiming that he didn't really know that Epstein was still friends with Mandelson afterward. I mean, even if you just had a sniff that somebody was friends with a paedophile, I'm pretty sure that would cross them off your Christmas card list, let alone you reaching out and giving them the top job, the top ambassadorial job in the world. It is what everybody wants that job, to be ambassador to the United States of America. And he handpicked Peter Mandelson for that job. I want to know why. I want to know what his thinking was. I want to know. I mean, Peter Mandelson, just to be really blunt about the man, he's never had a particularly good reputation for being high on integrity himself. So why you would choose somebody like that, I don't know. I mean, it was a Donald Trump second term. Maybe he thought that he could speak the same language as Donald Trump. They were both pals, best mates with Jeffrey Epstein. Maybe that was a consideration. I don't know. We don't know because we haven't been told. But I want to know from you, even if you are a staunch Labour supporter, is enough now? Does Keir Starmer really have to go at this point, show some integrity and resign over what was a monumental diplomatic and governmental cock-up? There is no other way of putting it. It is a disaster for Keir Starmer. It makes him look weak, it makes him look pathetic, and it makes him look like he had no integrity when that decision was made. Or it makes him look like his aides, his friends around him, his communications directors, his advisors were keeping stuff from him. And I'm not sure which is worse, right? If you're that weak that you're not getting the truth from your advisors, then who are you to be Prime Minister? Is it time for him to go? Give me a call, 0344 4991 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you straight back. And you can text, put the word talk and then your message to 87222. Well, joining me now is a man who I know will have a view on this, and that is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Lovely to see your little face, John. Thank you for joining me.
How you doing?
What do you make of the... I mean, this is bad, right?
I think since Keir Starmer started, he's had more than a few bad and torrid days. And frankly, today's the worst. I don't think I have any doubt about that. I think it was there for all to see in that joust with Kemi Badenoch at Prime Minister's Questions, where he openly admitted that he knew when he appointed Mandelson to be the US ambassador that Mandelson had maintained his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein even after his conviction, over incident of paedophilia. It then got worse in terms of humiliation for him later on in the day. He had a particular view about how the process of releasing these documents and what these documents should be, that really was under the control of the Cabinet Secretary and himself in effect, and basically following pressure led by Angela Rayner and from Labour MPs, he really had to cede that. It will now be up to that Intelligence and Security Committee to decide which documents will be released. Although there's been a funny thing happen today where the Metropolitan Police say no document should be released in case it prejudices their investigation. So an utterly humiliating day. You talked about at the beginning there a lack of integrity. Now, it was bad enough before the situation that Starmer and Morgan McSweeney, I have to say, were in even before now, with these crucial elections coming up in 92 days and a lot of jittery Labour MPs and Labour Party members all up and down the country. And now it's worse, on top of that lack of integrity you talked about, on top of a lack of judgment, a lack of authority, a lack of a direction for the party and the government. It doesn't look good, and there's lots of people, lots of commentators tonight, even people in the Labour Party as well, talking about today being possibly the beginning of the end. I've just watched the Labour MP Barry Gardiner on Newsnight in the last half hour. When asked if Starmer should resign, he said, he should really think of what the best thing is for his country and for his party. And when pressed on that question again, he just couldn't say anything. literally could say nothing. And I think that probably reflects the mood of quite a lot of MPs, Labour MPs in the House of Commons tonight.
Do you think that this is filtering through to the electorate, though? Is this something that we, that are into politics and get involved in politics, are more involved in than the public? Or do you think the public will see this very basic, what seems to be, at the very base of this, John, a lack of concern for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, right? I mean, that for me, I would say that he showed utter contempt. The man was jailed as a paedophile. He got a sweetheart deal. It was 36 victims at that point. He only got a year and a half for one victim on a sweetheart deal, but he was still a paedophile. There were still victims. And for me, I think that's where it might hit the public, is the lack of concern for those victims. What do you think?
I think that's entirely correct. Again, on the Newsnight programme, they had the brother and sister-in-law of Virginia Giuffre. There's been another admission tonight. Ghislaine Maxwell is saying that that photograph, which was disputed by Andrew, the man formerly known as Prince, that this photograph was real, but Ghislaine Maxwell has confirmed that it is real. There's been, I suspect, a big campaign is still going on, obviously, on the other side of the Atlantic round about this. And after all this time, I think finally, the voices of victims are really starting to be heard. And in reality, over the course of the last, 6 months or so, we are finally seeing some people, a very small number of people, getting some kind of comeuppance, right? It's not much of a comeuppance to a certain degree, in the sense that, nobody, as far as I can see, has yet been convicted of anything. The people that we are talking about who are accused are people, of being in high positions, some very rich people, and the voices of the victims have not been properly heard. But I think now it seems, with the part publication, because again, we are still going through, I think it's only half of the documents, that those voices are starting to be heard, and in some instances, something is happening to the people who are being accused, even if it's just lots of publicity around it, and presumably that, and hopefully that will lead to, further investigation and perhaps some kind of situation where these people can be brought to boot and brought to some kind of justice.
Oh, I sincerely hope you're right, John. I just fear that no one will pay for that horrendous situation. I just want to touch on Gordon Brown a bit, because Mandy was his deputy PM at the time that he was passing off information to Epstein and the banking giant JP Morgan Stanley. How embarrassing is this for Brown?
I think, to be fair to Brown, I think it is very embarrassing that Brown brought him back. When he did. Of course, these instances, I mean, we're talking about, you've heard all these words today about Mandelson, and these are words that you're mostly hearing from Labour MPs, appalling, disgusting, betrayal, traitor, a whole list of words, right, which are, strong condemnation of all of that. Gordon Brown himself, in fact, I think, referred some stuff to the police the other night. I was half joking today and said, to be a fly in the wall in Gordon Brown's kitchen over the past couple of days. But I think he will be very rightly angry. I mean, who could believe that someone who was sitting round the cabinet table would at the same time be, before anybody knew anything in a time of great economic crisis for the country. Now, nobody would gainsay, for example, the word integrity about Alistair Darling, the late Chancellor of the Exchequer, when Mandelson was going off away in the corner, sending emails to Jeffrey Epstein, telling him everything that was going on. I mean, this stuff's unbelievable.
And then Mandelson taking credit for getting rid of Brown.
Yeah, he persuaded him to go.
Yeah.
But, there's a thing I've been thinking about, over the past few hours about, Mandelson's been with us such a long time. We all talk about 1997 and the Great Labour victory and, what had happened before that. Actually, Blair, Brown and Mandelson were really the architects of New Labour going back all that time. He was a key figure even before that. He was Neil Kinnock's Director of Communications. That's where he gained that reputation, that the sobriquet as being the Prince of Darkness. And again, what's been interesting for me when I've looked at this is that apart from that period, I think about 4 years when he was the European Commissioner, in each of the 3 times, including now, when he was forced to resign, he didn't actually last very long.
No. This is why I want to know why. Why choose him?
Yeah, in 1998, he resigned as Secretary of State for Trade and Industry after just 5 months over that big loan that he took from Geoffrey Robinson and didn't declare. And then in 1999, I think he was appointed as Northern Ireland Secretary, and he lasted, I think, to January 2001. And then, this situation, and that was over that passport, the Hinduja passport row, and the Hinduja family. There was an Indian tycoon. His family had donated to the Millennium Dome, which Mandelson had oversaw. And then we've now got the current situation. He was hardly, he was hitting the job, right, from what I think February last year as US ambassador, and he lasted till September. But, somehow or other, the people in the Labour Party, whoever they may be, Blair in the first 2 instances and Starmer in this one, somehow or other thought it was appropriate, despite all the warnings and despite the history, to reappoint them. And,
the old boys club is alive and well, isn't it? I mean, I think that's what we can say. Because I just don't get, with a CV like that, and the guy not being known for having the highest levels of integrity, you just got the big question for me is why? What was the thinking?
You just have to think, is there nobody else? Right?
I mean, I would have done it.
And certainly, as far as the US ambassador, I think there were certainly a couple of other people, who were thought appropriate to be shortlisted. It's a bit ironic that I think Mandelson was probably appointed to the job as US ambassador because of his knowledge of Donald Trump. Now,
that's exactly what I was saying, yeah.
Everybody thinks that Donald Trump had some involvement round about Jeffrey Epstein as well. I wouldn't say any more than that.
No,
I don't want to get any trouble.
You and I was thinking exactly the same thing, that I want to know if that played into it, that because they were pals, they had a mutual friend, that maybe Keir Starmer believed that would be helpful to him. But I suspect we'll never know that.
We shouldn't forget that a whole load of people at the time thought this was a wee bit of a masterstroke, appointing Mandelson to that position.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, he's lasted a few months. I think, again, a lot of commentators are saying tonight, and I think I agree with this, is that all of this, if it wasn't going to happen anyway, is likely to end in a very bad place for the Prime Minister and a bad place for Morgan McSweeney, his Chief of Staff as well.
Who he can't seem to breathe without. It's an extraordinary relationship they've got. John, thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a little break, but that's what I'm going to be talking about at midnight. So, do you think that Keir Starmer really has shot himself in the foot this time, that it is time for him to go, and he should actually resign over this? This is a shocker. Quick break, back in a second.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here with you, and with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, as we go through the papers. Let's kick off with the Telegraph, shall we, John? Rayner turns on Starmer. This again is about the Mandelson scandal, but Angela Rayner really beginning to show her true colours now.
Yeah, well, you know, it's not something that we hadn't thought about before, to be fair. I think, you know, it's only a few months since Angela Rayner fell under the proverbial political bus over that situation about her second home somewhere in the south coast of England. You know, she's a favourite of the Labour backbenchers. She's a favourite of the left wing of the Labour Party.
And the unions love her.
Yep. And here we see, in some ways, no surprise that with, I suppose, the demise of Andy Burnham in the past couple of weeks, though I suspect, given everything that's happened in the last week, Andy Burnham has probably had a lucky escape that he's not the candidate in the forthcoming by-election. But anyway, we'll leave that for the moment. Angela Rayner, they're leading the charge in the House of Commons this afternoon. In effect, as I said earlier, providing humiliation for the Prime Minister and forcing him into a position where the documents around about the Mandelson affair are going to be given to that Intelligence and Security Committee. That's the 9-member committee of Lords and MPs who will examine these and decide, you know, which ones can be published, bearing in mind national security considerations.
Yeah, but is it though interesting, because you know Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer at the beginning of this, which feels like it was 100 years ago, were close. That he was a big fan of hers. He pushed her forward. He gave her the top job. He, you know, grace and favour homes, all of those things, and now it appears that the worm has turned on him. That she has shown her true colours now. I mean, this is it. There's no pretence anymore. They're not best buds anymore.
Well, look, hand in glove. You know, again, I think we've already seen over the course of the past few months Wes Streeton positioning himself for some kind of run at the leadership.
Definitely.
If, you know, as would, you know, we're probably now expecting, and we were, you know, we're now expecting really that Starmer will probably have to go after the elections, you know, and even today's events will be a contributing factor to those May elections and the result anyway. If there's going to be a contest over the summer for the leadership of the Labour Party, you've now got, well, at least two possible candidates, one representing the left, Angela Rayner, and one representing, you know, probably the right wing of the Labour Party, Wes Streeting. Now, other candidates, as they say, are probably available, right? But, you know, you can see people lining up and positioning themselves for such a contest.
So this is her response is in reaction to his weakness. Do we think that there's nothing for her to lose now? That she's seen the blood in the water. That this is the arrow that could kill him. That this is her chance.
Well, I think, you know, there's a pretty widespread view now within people in the Labour Party that, you know, I saw somebody earlier on social media talking about how they liked him. He's quite a nice guy, but, you know, he doesn't have essentially the attributes that are needed to run the country. I think today is the beginning of the end. You know, it was always going to come. It's probably... I don't think they can get rid of him before these elections. Now it's too late, and they certainly wouldn't be able to have a replacement in on time. They're going to take an absolute, to use the Scottish expression, doing on May the 7th. And, you know, even those elements of the party that are still sympathetic in one way or another to Starmer will know that it's time for him to go. They can spend a few months over the summer period, maybe have a proper election, have a new leader or something by the party conference.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, by the conference.
But ironically, we probably thought that before the events of today anyway.
Yeah.
But the events of the day, again, to use another well-worn expression, kind of put the tin lid in it. And, this thing's still got a way to run, a way to go. There'll be more embarrassment, no doubt, in whatever is actually published, whenever that is. But I just think that I saw Brian Leishman, kind of rebel Labour MP who was suspended before, actually put his name to a statement earlier questioning whether or not Starmer should stay. People will just start to come out and start saying publicly it's kind of not really very tenable.
But the letters will go into the 1922 committee after May, you think?
Well, yeah, the Labour Party. Look, I just think there'll be people knocking his door and just saying, look, the game's a bogey, the game's up.
Time to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. I tell you that for absolutely nothing. The Guardian has said basically it's over for Starmer. Labour MPs amid the fury over Mandelson. But as you were saying that, I can't help thinking that this is almost an excuse that they were looking for. Is that what it feels like to you, rather than this being in of itself the reason they think he should go?
I think the catalyst for it was going to be a poor election result on May the 7th. You've got the Scottish election at the moment. If you look at the opinion polls in Scotland, Labour are running third, but not far away from being about fourth. In Wales, Plaid are running away with the election and the opinion polls, though, not too far behind as Reform. Labour in Wales, which they have never lost, are sitting at 12% in the opinion polls.
Wow.
I mean, it's unheard of. It's never been seen before. And, any polls I've looked at in England are suggesting that, Reform are winning, Labour are probably neck and neck at best with the Tories, but that was before all of this, and I think I don't think this is. I think this is more than a bubble story. I think people. This is the kind of story that will have cut through with people, and again, if more generally, I just think at the moment. A lot of people will be are already feeling pretty disillusioned, disheartened by all of the political parties. This stuff just makes it absolutely worse. And for a lot of people, they've had, more than a decade of the Conservatives. They've had a pretty rubbish time, at least that is their feeling, with less than 2 years of Labour. And you cannot be surprised to see, for example, how well in England and in Scotland anyway, and Wales, how well Reform are polling.
Yeah.
And again in Wales, it has to be mentioned how well Plaid Cymru, the Welsh nationalists, are actually polling. And in Scotland, it looks as if the SNP are going to be the government again for another 5 years, having already been there since 2007.
It is extraordinary to look at this government and just see. I mean, we've talked about it before, John. I mean, the ability to punch themselves in the face has just never ceased to amaze me. I mean, it is literally it's an art form. I mean, certainly with Starmer, it's become an absolute art form.
Well, it's just, you just go back to day one. I mean, I can remember us talking about this. First it was the suits and the shoes and the specs. Yeah. Remember all that stuff? And then it was the crazy decision about the winter fuel payment.
For no apparent reason.
And it just went on and on and on. And again, in a funny kind of way about this story, it is utterly shocking, but it is just a spectacular political misjudgment to make this appointment in the first place.
All by his own making. This is the thing. It's all like I said, punching himself in the face.
Yeah, what were they thinking of?
How did they think this was going to go?
Yeah, there's a bit of that's kind of, you know, the mindset that people get into in a bubble as well. You know, they had the rubbish 6 months and they thought, here's a wizard wheeze, he's a mate of Donald Trump, you know, he's comfortable in all these circles, we'll give him the job. And it's just so spectacularly backfired because, as I said earlier, nobody really looked at the history and nobody really, it appears anyway, managed to... Look, the Prime Minister could be right. He could be right when he said all day, and again, this I think is widely reported in the papers, all of them tomorrow, that he was lied to, that he was not told the whole truth.
But like I said, the man had... Epstein had been in prison for being a paedophile. Yeah. The fact that Mandelson was ever friends with him would definitely rule him out in my life, right? I mean, I wouldn't be giving him a top job.
Well, I think he stayed in his apartment when he was in the jail.
Yeah.
I think I read earlier.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like you know, the somewhat unfortunate Sarah Ferguson. You know, the friendship never went away. No,
never went away. And I said at the beginning of the programme, I really believe we're at the foothills of this as well. As you alluded to, there's going to be more, and it is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I just don't know at what point the Prime Minister says, "Okay, this was a complete and utter cock up. I have to leave over this." But they don't resign anymore, John. They don't.
Well, there's you know, I watched Andrew Marr talking earlier on LBC, and. He said, you know, he said his confession was he likes Keir Starmer. He said he was a decent man. He said he came out of it, and the reason he thought he was a decent man is he came into politics for the right reasons. The problem, though, is that, you know, it's like he was unprepared for government. He's not really a kind of, you know, the very talented politicians, you know, in a situation even like today, right, somehow or other can get them. I think, for example, if Tony Blair had been the Prime Minister, Tony Blair would have managed to get himself off a hook today. I don't know why I think that, but I do. And I just think that Starmer hasn't been and will probably never be in that kind of league.
Yeah, no,
you know,
I agree.
Look, you can criticise Tony Blair for lots of things in hindsight and all that sort of stuff, but, you know, he was of a different order, for example, in being able to perform in the House of Commons.
And communication.
Starmer just looked a kind of sorry kind of figure today.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he didn't cover himself in glory, and he didn't show any strength either. Right, let's take a quick break, John, and we'll come back and have a look at the rest of the papers.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. The Mirror for tomorrow, John, is leading with "I can't imagine life without my John." This is about the widow's shock at Virgo's sudden death.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of these, it says on the front page, snooker loses a legend. I think, was he 79 years old? You know, pretty well known, not just obviously for being so adept at the game, but also as a commentator. And just a very sad story of someone, you know, for a lot of people, characters like John Virgo have been in their living room at the same time every year going back for, what, a good number of decades?
Yeah, and it was only a couple of weeks ago, was it last week? He was on tour with Dennis Taylor and Steve Davis, so it was a sudden death, and that's what shocked his wife. They said they were days away from our 16th wedding anniversary.
It's one of these, snooker's one of these remarkable sports where people can go on and on and on.
Yeah, of course.
You know, John Higgins in Scotland, for example, was another one of these guys who, you know, some of these guys are still winning tournaments.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, you know, lots of sporting lives end for people, you know, sometimes by 30, sometimes by 40, but snooker's the kind of place, kind of sport that's going on, you know, where individuals can go on for a long time. And it's the kind of sport that's got, you know, a real solid following. You can still see the championships in the TV. It's great, it's good entertainment.
And you can play it yourself. You can go into a pub and play it yourself.
And a sport where, you know, certainly, you know, in Britain, where we've had lots of good people, we've always said that, you know, snooker's a sport that people in Scotland are good at, because we're only good at sports where people can either just stand up or sit down. Don't give us any of that running and cycling stuff, right? But snooker's the kind of thing that we're okay at.
And darts.
And it's inside, keeps you out the rain.
Yeah, quite. Snooker and darts. But having said that, though, I just want to pick on one of the stories that you mentioned. King Charles has given the go-ahead for a bank holiday in Scotland the day after the football heroes play their first World Cup match in 28 years. So you get something. You know.
But I'm actually, there's been, you know, there's a wee bit of backlash against this from some businesses, you know, and you know, and one of the councils in Scotland, Edinburgh Council, says it's not going to do it.
Everybody will be off sick with a hangover anyway. Come on, let's be honest.
Well, I'll
might
tell
as
you
well
what,
be a public holiday.
I mean, even for Scotland, there'll need to be some good championship drinking going on. I mean, the game's at 2 o'clock in the morning on the 14th, and they're giving us the whole day off on the 15th, right? So it's a kind of strange one.
Yeah, maybe it should be the 14th and the 15th.
And there is this. Well, look, we are also making a presumption. The game that we're playing is our first game against Haiti, and the presumption is we will win that game. Let's just wait and see.
Yeah, but at least you've got a bank holiday, which is more than we're going to get. The Daily Star, alluding to that photograph that we mentioned at the top of this hour, they met. I thought I'd read somewhere anyway that because this was a Polaroid that was taken, and there was a guy who was saying not long ago that he's got the original Polaroid, that it hadn't been messed with, that this is an actual image. But now, as you rightly say, that Ghislaine Maxwell has said that it is real, this photograph. Yeah,
but what's interesting about this for me is it raises questions about explanations that have been given in the past. I can certainly, in fact, I think we can all probably remember that the explanation as to why that wasn't real was because I think in that particular evening wasn't Andrew Mountbatten Windsor supposed to have been in a pizza restaurant with, was it his children?
With his daughters,
So if that story is real, then I'll say no more than it raises questions about what who said what to whom and why.
And it also says no sweat here because another excuse was that he didn't sweat because of something that happened to him in the Falkland Islands or something.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Anyway, Ghislaine Maxwell, I think she's seeking a pardon, isn't she, at the moment, from Donald Trump?
Well, I think she's been moved, I think, to a pretty liberal and relaxed regime it's not quite an open prison, but certainly compared to the conditions that she was under before. And she had various meetings with various government lawyers to talk about what might or might not be said, which might help her case. Yeah. So again, look, there'll be lots more revelations. We've only seen 3 million documents. There's 3 million perhaps to go. Yeah, exactly. But Todd Blanche, as you referred to, there's the Deputy Attorney General, apparently bought her a puppy that she now has in that jail. I mean, don't even. So that's the Daily Star. The Sun, Epstein files outrage mounts with just the headline, revolting. Staff strike at Andy's new home. This is shamed. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is facing a revolt from staff at his new Sandringham home who refused to serve him. Look, more of this, as you say, right? This story is going to run and run and run. Yeah. So we'll still be talking about it next week. Yeah, no, I completely agree. We're at the foothills of stuff about him as well. I'm absolutely sure about. And of course, the police now looking into whether a young woman was trafficked across from America. The police are looking into that at the moment to see if there is anything to investigate. So we better leave that there. But it says that Labour MPs force PM Mandy Utah. But the front page to have, the Sun, I always think of as a Labour, used to think of as a Labour-leaning newspaper, the working man's paper, with revolting on it and a picture of Andrew and Keir Starmer together. That's not a front page you want to see, is it? No, it's not a good look. But again, I think for me as well, the other thing that's just so interesting is the unanimity across all the papers about, certainly the position of the Prime Minister, the Guardian, the Times, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, all saying similar things about how much trouble he's in. Yeah, he really is. The Metro, that photograph of Mandelson, I just can't bear it. I don't know why I keep showing it. Liar, liar, pants on, hired. Keir Starmer facing growing crisis over his leadership after admitting he knew of concerns of Lord Mandelson's long friendship with billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, but still gave him crucial government job. And there's that picture there of Peter Mandelson. I keep asking this question. So who takes these photographs? Who is taking all these photographs? Who's Peter there? Mandelson in his pants. Yeah, in his little white pants. It looks like a nappy. I mean, it's a horrible picture. Oh, God. I mean, you'd think that would be humiliation enough, wouldn't you? But probably not for somebody like Lord Mandelson. But what a bizarre... Who was going around snapping these photographs? Exactly, right. Mind you wouldn't be able to call... Well, will you be able to call him Lord Mandelson? I think he's still allowed to call himself that. That's the problem, is that he can keep his title if he retires from the Lords. So he's still Lord Mandelson. But that photograph... Anyway, the Daily Express... Wes Streeting listens to our campaign for better mental health support for sufferers. Thank you for backing Cancer Care Call. Of course, Wes Streeting is a cancer survivor, isn't he? So this is a real heartfelt project of his, and he seems to be really pouring everything he can into it. Yeah, I mean, I think he had kidney cancer, was my recollection. Yeah, and this is something that's very close to him. And, it is all about mental health support for people who have cancer. I think a big and important initiative. This at the same time as people are talking about, much better treatment for cancer, much better diagnosis.
And survival rates going up. So 75% of people with cancer should be able to live with it rather than die from it. It's extraordinary.
And the kind of headline ahead tomorrow that the Labour Party would want to see in more newspapers than one.
Yeah, but it does, again, this is where Streeting, he's really pushing forward with a lot of things with health, isn't he? And that is, I think, also lending people to think of him as prime ministerial.
You know, I think he comes from a school of politics, you know, which basically says the big issue for any government these days is actually the perception that governments fail to deliver. And I think what he's trying to do is, in the brief that he's got, to improve things on waiting times and waiting lists, to improve things on big issues, medical health issues like cancer, and it's all about delivery for him. And again, you know, that's very, very different from, you know, all of the stories by and large that I've got, or a lot of the stories that have got Starmer's government into trouble, which is all about, you know, internal backbiting and fighting, misjudgments and mistakes. This is something that, well, for me, looks more real, and if the Labour government could get onto that agenda, maybe they would be doing a bit better than they appear to be at the moment. Yeah,
but he's for me, he's looking very strong with his brief, and people will be looking at that and going, well, if he's that good on the... And he's a good communicator as well, to be fair.
Look, for anybody that's met Street, and he's got something about him, I think, you know, and you know, there's few politicians have that kind of, well, a bit of pizzazz, a wee bit of charisma and stuff, and he's certainly got a bit of that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's fast becoming the forerunner. Let's take a quick break, but John and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, taking a look at the Daily Mail, again going big on the Starmer story. Starmer in grave peril as Rayner twists the knife. I don't think there's much more to say about that, is there, except that he's in big trouble.
Look, I think one of the things I'm interested in is to see, McSweeney has been, his chief of staff's been a bit of a human shield for Starmer, and he's managed to hang on to him despite, as we've said, all the misjudgments and mistakes over the piece since the general election. And, if there's anybody who might go soon, he might have to fall on his sword before Starmer himself is exposed to that. But, the big point remains is it all looks like the beginning of the end. And that's frankly where we are at the moment.
Yeah, it could be that Keir Starmer throws McSweeney as you would meat to a lion to distract people, right? So it could be that he chucks McSweeney in front of the crowds and the pack and say, look, that's your sacrifice, and blame him for not advising him correctly. But that will only be holding off the pack for a while, won't it?
Yeah, but none of that helps him in terms of his quest to find what and for the rest of us to find out what Starmer really stands for. True. What's his direction of travel? Is he in favour of changing the welfare system, or is he not? Is he really in favour of economic growth, because he doesn't seem to have done that much about it? Who is he, and what does he stand for? He still has all those questions, even this far in, nearly a couple of years in from winning. And I think that's part of his problem. That's going to be part of the problem for whoever, if he does fall on his sword, is going to be part of the problem in terms of, how they define themselves as well. Which is maybe why, if you do have some kind of election between the left and the right, there might be a bit more clarity in that.
But also it means we're left with David Lammy.
Well, look, it just depends. If you have a new leader brings in their own people, But
I'm saying if Starmer were to step down suddenly, if he wasn't, if there wasn't the whole process that they went through, if he resigned and said, right, stuff the lot of you, I'm off, it would be David Lammy that had to...
Who would be there for a few months, until you get somebody else.
Apparently he insists on people calling him Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, maybe that's because people don't really feel as if they want to.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got to tell people to call you Deputy Prime Minister, then it's probably because they don't really see you in that role. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, egos will. The Times... again, as you said, it is interesting to see the papers all united over the fact that this is a big, huge deal for Starmer, right? Everybody's saying it. This is his future on the line now. Yeah. And Palestine Action Group acquitted of vandalism.
That's a very interesting story. But if you go 3 paragraphs down into the story, it tells you that after 36 hours and 34 minutes, I think it says, that the jury couldn't come to a decision on a series of other charges. And that means it looks like there'll need to be a retrial round about it. So it's not quite finished yet.
Yeah, it is. It just seems like it is going to go on and on and on. After a police sergeant was struck with a sledgehammer, this is a jury acquitted 6 Palestinian Action activists yesterday of mounting a raid on an Israel-based defence company's factory in which more than £1 million worth of military equipment was destroyed, and a female police officer was left with a fractured spine. So incredibly serious. And the Chagos deal, just at the bottom there, Downing Street believes the US will back its deal to hand back the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, despite President Trump calling the plan an act of great stupidity.
Well, it depends what day of the week it is, you know.
That is true.
Let's see what side of the bed he wakes on next week
Yeah.
to see whether it's a good plan or a bad plan, and see how long it lasts.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it depends, like a cushion, depends who last sat on it, isn't it? Let's have a look at some of the stories that you picked as well. Measles is back. Funnily enough, I did a phone-in on this a week or so ago. Parents caught up in COVID conspiracies must be confronted with the effects of the killer disease. This is after the WHO, the World Health Organization, took away our "we're free of measles" certificate.
85% is now the figure for the uptake in measles vaccination in the UK.
Which is well below herd immunity.
In order to get herd immunity, you need 95%. The article that Alice Thompson wrote in the Times this morning is saying that it's more infectious than Ebola. And the article talks about, you know, again, over the past couple of years, what have we had? We've had 3,000 cases and nearly 5 deaths. So that's in 2024. You know, this is something that we thought had disappeared.
Yeah.
And post-COVID, you know, with all the stuff that we got about how, you know, vaccines were dangerous and stuff, people bought into some of this. And it took so many years to arrive, you know, at herd immunity for this really dangerous thing. And for me, I think all this stuff's really stupid and dangerous.
Yeah, it's
that's
so
my
dangerous.
view.
I agree.
And you know, it's now back, and the number of cases has gone up because we can't get, you know, parents to have their children vaccinated.
It is extraordinary. This is my favourite bit. It says it's astonishing the number of people who are happy to inject their faces with Botox and fillers, stab themselves with Ozempic, or put their child on ADHD medication, but who appear horrified by the idea of any inoculation against a life-threatening illness. And that kind of sums it up, doesn't it, really? It totally sums it up for me.
It does.
Another story that I liked here. So the British taxpayer is funding our greatest museums. Time to make the tourists pay. This has been mooted for years, as far as I can remember. But how do you identify who's a tourist and who isn't?
Well, I think this is a really interesting story. I think it'd be possible to do that, right? What attracted my interest in it was that you'll have seen last week that they're charging, it's only €2, but an entry system to see the Trevi Fountain in Rome. Yeah. You know, and you've also got, certainly, you know, starting in many places in Scotland in the next few months, a tourist tax that we've never had before. And again, we're emulating what goes on in the European, you know, continent. So and in lots of cities wherever you go. The article in the Telegraph, the opinion piece in the Telegraph, says that you can expect to pay 15 quid. 15 euros, 13 quid to go into the Prado in Madrid. I have to say, having been there a few times, it's well worth the 13 quid. And I just wonder, you know, if you could work out a system. You know, lots of people domestically say, oh, the museums and stuff should be free. If you could work out a system, I don't know that visitors would be particularly. It's not going to stop anybody from coming if they're going to have to pay a few quid to get into any of the big museums we've got. Oh,
we've got some of the most amazing museums. One of the best ones is a museum called the Petrie Museum.
Oh, very good. Well, we don't have any in my name yet, but certainly yet.
Just old photographs of me. It's great. No, it isn't. It's actually an Egyptology museum. It's very good. Right. And this was a little giggle, I have to say. I really enjoyed this one. Tesco, sorry for putting up Welsh bilingual signs. Why? Why are they sorry?
Well, they put them up in Cornwall, which is 200 miles away, right? Which I thought that was a great story.
It's a
One
great
of these
story.
quirky stories that, you know, you sometimes see stories that tell you things that you had no idea about, and this, for me, was one of them. I didn't know that recently that Cornish, or Kernewek, is that how you pronounce it? Is the name of the language, had been given minority status as a language. I think quite quite recently. It talks about how I'm just trying to remember try to look for the numbers here. Cornwall Council believes there are 500 advanced Cornish speakers.
Well, there's about the same.
2,000 people with basic levels of the language. I think that's absolutely fascinating.
I do too, but it's so they must have been so confused when the Welsh signs went up in Cornwall. I love that story. John, thank you so much. John Boothman there, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Talk Back, which is when you get the chance to do exactly that. There are no guests here, there is nothing, there is just you and me. We clear the decks for you. And what I want to talk to you about, and it's one of those things that I'm never quite sure if, because I'm interested in politics. The way I see politics is it's showbiz for ugly people. I wish that was my line. It isn't, but it's rather good. And that's how I feel about it. So I sort of watch it like a soap opera, if you like. You know, the villains, the lovers, all of these things, because they are just playing a game, aren't they? Let's be honest. So I sometimes wonder when I get fascinated by a story and think of the questions, whether actually that is for everybody, that everybody is the same. There's this thing known as the Westminster bubble, right, where it's all sort of happens, especially in London, right, we get a bit sort of Westminster focused. So I'm just wondering if this has actually affected your view of Keir Starmer. And that, of course, is the Mandelson scandal. The fact that Keir Starmer hired a man to the highest ambassadorial office in the land who was friends with a paedophile. I wonder if that has affected your thinking about Sir Keir Starmer. Do you think that shows a lack of integrity, or it shows a lack of understanding or a lack of vetting or a lack of... I mean, it's not good, right? It's not good. I mean, back in 2008, we all knew that Jeffrey Epstein was a paedophile. Oh, 2007, actually. I think it was, might have even been earlier, that we knew Epstein was a paedophile. And then he went to prison. He came out in 2009 after serving just a very short sweetheart deal prison sentence of 1.5 years in a gentleman's club, basically. He was in a soft prison as well. A deal was struck. Oh, I wonder why. But this powerful man that knew literally where the bodies were buried, if we're to believe the latest tranche of the Epstein files. So he got a sweetheart deal. He went to prison as a paedophile on one count, although at that point there were 36 victims that came forward. He got done for one of them. He came out as a paedophile, and Peter Mandelson is staying in his flat and still being friends with him. In fact, there's email proof that Mandelson was trying to help him and advise him how to get his conviction quashed. It's all extraordinary. But it plays into what we were talking about yesterday morning, that these rich, powerful men just don't see that they're doing anything wrong, or they don't believe they're ever going to be caught, or they don't believe they're ever going to, and nothing bad's ever going to happen to them. They're never going to, and all the while Epstein is keeping millions of documents, every email that was sent, everything. Most of us try and purge our email occasionally, don't we? Delete stuff and all that. Not Mandelson, no. I wonder for what reason he kept every single communication that he had with every single person. I wonder. Could it have been blackmail? Who knows? I think we do know. But Keir Starmer hires Mandelson into that position, which I think, at the very least, shows a distinct lack of respect for the victims of this paedophile, who, in case you need reminding, are children. Children that were sexually abused and raped. I mean, that would be enough for me. I think, in fact, I know that would be enough for me. I don't think I would be, having any dealings with anybody who was that tight, called himself a best mate with somebody like that. And Mandy claims he didn't know anything about it. Well, he knew he'd been in prison. He knew he'd been found guilty. And yet he was promoted to the top job, the top diplomatic job in the world. Why? And now Sir Keir Starmer is saying he didn't know. Mandy lied to him. That he lied during the vetting process. Well, it's not much of a vetting process, is it, if you can just lie? I mean, that's not vetting, is it? Hey, are you still friends with a paedophile? No. Oh, OK then, I'll tick the no box. I mean, that's not much vetting, is it? So what actually did go on? And why was Mandelson given that job? What was the thinking? Why did they think that Mandelson would be the perfect person to deal with Donald Trump? Could it be that they knew the same people? Could it be they spent time in the same circles, spoke the same language? Will we ever know? But the question I have for you is, does this change the way you feel about Keir Starmer? Do you think that he should resign over this? Do you think that this is serious? I mean, every single newspaper, there's probably, I think, the Express and one other that doesn't handle this question over Keir Starmer, and Starmer fighting for his future. This is a massive deal. Not just that he hired Mandelson to that position, but what Mandelson then... We are now learning about Mandelson, who appears to have been sending secret financial information across the pond to a billionaire paedophile. Information we don't know what impact that had. So the police are now looking into Mandelson, as we discussed yesterday morning. But look, I want to hear from you, particularly if you are a Labour voter. particularly if you are a Labour voter. Has this changed anything for you? Or do you think this is Westminster bubble? This is irrelevant, that actually he doesn't need to resign over this. He made a mistake. I mean, it is a doozy of a mistake, to be fair. But you may think that this is smoke and mirrors, that this is just... I'm tending to think that the backbenchers are seeing this as an excuse, that in of itself, if he'd done everything else right, if he was up in the polls, they would be supporting him through this. That's what I believe. I believe that if he was up in the polls and everybody loved him, then that they would be fighting to save their Prime Minister. But this feels like the knife that they're going to use on Keir Starmer. That already he's unpopular, already he's down in the polls significantly. We've got the by-elections coming up in May. They're going to let him struggle on till then, perhaps, and then he's gone. What do you think? Or have you lost faith in all politicians? Give me a call. I really want to hear from you if you are a Labour voter, if this has altered the way you think at all. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you straight back, and you can text me as well with the word talk and then your message to 87222. Let's go to the phones now. Robert is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Oh, Petrie, my God, what's happening? It's you know, you took my phrase away. I'll tell you what's going to happen to Mandelson. Nothing. I'll tell you, for him, like Epstein, knows where the bodies are buried. He's a very, very, very dangerous man. And if he does go down, he'll take God knows how many people with him.
Do you think so?
Yeah, he knows where, you know, you used my phrase a couple of minutes ago, but he knows where the bodies are buried. And the thing is, what you got to remember with Keir Starmer, he didn't know what was going on. He's used his old Jimmy Savile one. He said that about Jimmy Savile, didn't he? You can't keep saying, you know, the buck stops at you. The thing is, this government, regardless of what's happened, this government are unfit to govern. It was very evident within a couple of weeks when I was in office. This is not Boris having a bit of cake and a glass of wine on the lawn. This is bigger than the Profumo affair. Now, this is government secrets. You know, they have to be, I think, straight away, they've got to have a general election. Straight away. This government is dangerous. He's going backwards and forth. I think he's done 38 foreign trips. He's courting the Chinese. I mean, you could go on, but just look around you since the election, the wave of depression that's hit the country.
Yeah.
You know, it's just brought a wave of depression.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I don't think anything's felt quite as bad as it does right now. And not just here, but around the world, right? And like you said, never hear Keir. He seems to relish being on the world stage. But
he's got Brexit to thank for that, hasn't he? Because if we wouldn't have left the EU, he wouldn't have been the spokesman. He forgets that. Yeah, he would have been someone else from the EU. He loves it, and yet he was dead again. It was the fact that we left the EU that he's been allowed to be the statesman.
Yeah. But what about Mandelson? I mean, do you think it's worse that Keir Starmer hired him knowing that he had been friends with a paedophile, or the apparent?
Look, let's don't insult people's intelligence. You're a journalist. You probably knew for years, and you know, there's lots of things that you can't say, but I can say what I want. You know, but you obviously can't say but it's old news. It's a bit like Jimmy Savile. I mean, I know people who are in pop bands who are in top of the pop. Everybody knew.
I mean, that is a very good point, and I was sort of alluding to that yesterday when we were talking about the Epstein files. Is that you can't tell me that people didn't know. You can't, because everybody knew. I mean, my dad worked at the BBC at the same time as Jimmy Savile, and I wanted to go on Jim Will Fix It. I don't know if you remember that programme.
He fixed it all right.
Yeah, he certainly did. And my dad said, absolutely not. And then when it all came out about Jimmy Savile, I said, did you know? And he said, do you know what? He said, we knew, but we didn't know. You know, it was just went around, don't let your daughters anywhere near Jimmy Savile. But he said, but we didn't dig in, we didn't dig and try and find out. And the whole thing with Epstein, with Mandelson having been on the island and saying, well, I didn't know anything that was going on the island because I'm a gay man. There's still people talking.
You know, I'm sorry to be a little bit cold.
You can't say that. You can't say that.
Well, I did. I just said it. I'll say it again if you want.
No, I'd rather you didn't. But you know, there's no proof. There's nothing in those files that suggests that Mandelson had any part in any of the nasty shenanigans that went on the island. But what I'm saying is that it's difficult to believe that people who'd spent time with Epstein and spent time on that island didn't know something was going on, right? It's the same with the Jimmy Savile in the BBC thing. People knew, they just didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, but you know, it's the same as I've always been a bit of a royalist, but you know, the Queen's gone right down in my estimation. So she's basically paid Andrew's
dirty money, yeah.
So she's paid him off. You know,
she paid the hush money for him, didn't she? Yeah. Yeah, but I wonder if, though, as a mum, she just didn't believe it could be true and just wanted it to go away, rather than knew and wanted to silence her.
You know. I mean, but going back to, I mean, that's the sexual thing. So, you know, what's going on with them is no different to the grooming gangs, the Asian grooming gangs. It's child abuse. It's no different. It's just that these people are multi-millionaires.
Exactly.
It's no different.
It's absolutely no different. In fact, it's worse, because some of the details that we're getting now, it's even worse than you can possibly, even in your most, you know, degraded moments, could think about. There's some of the things that are being discussed now that went on Epstein's Island and in Epstein's properties around the world are beyond anything. That it's a horror movie.
Let me ask you something, Petrie. Would it, at the end of it, when all the dust settles, what do you think will happen to Mandelson?
Nothing.
Nothing. And I'll tell you...
Well, actually, he could end up...
Well, they've not even took his lordship away from him.
Well, no, they haven't, because he's resigned and he retains the title. They could... It would take an act of Parliament to remove his... and updating the laws, because the laws to remove a peerage go way back to the First World War. And they were invented then, these rules, in case somebody was a traitor or a spy, and they could then have their peerage. But it's very specific to the World War I, so they'd have to take that law and update it and then remove his peerage from him, which I can see they might do, because they might want to update it anyway. Over his friendship with Epstein and what he knew and didn't know, nothing is going to happen to Mandelson. Over him potentially sharing financial secrets, I imagine an arrest is imminent.
Yeah, like I said to you, you know, he knows where the bodies are buried, and I think there's a lot of people who at this tonight are pooing themselves. Excuse me, I've cleaned that up a bit, but they're literally pooing themselves, because you know he's not called the Dark Lord for nothing.
No,
he's a very, very bad. People were terrified of him, absolutely terrified of him. But as far as the government, I mean, you know, I don't believe that Starmer didn't know. I believe that as much as he knew about Jimmy Savile. He's not fit to run this country, but nor is the party. The government is not. They need to do something quick now, because if you look what's happened in the last 18 months, it don't stop.
I know. It really doesn't. It's an absolute fiasco. We thought the Tories were bad, right? And all the messing about and the shenanigans there. Do you think that Keir Starmer will resign over this?
No, I'll tell you what's going to happen. Angela Rayner has got the bread knife behind her back. Now, she's the one who promised all the WASPy women, my wife being one of them, that was on their referendum. She was going to get them their money. She's a bigger liar.
They all say what they think we want to hear, don't they? They just say anything so that we vote for them.
You know, I think they need to have a general election straight away, which they need to cobble together some sort of, you know, like wartime. I don't know what to do, because I don't.
They're not going to call a general election because they know that it'll be the end of Labour, so they're not going to do that.
Well, it's the end of Labour anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Labour will spend a very, very long time in the reeds, so to speak, after this, unless they get rid of Starmer and they have a cracking last 3 years, and then.
So if they got rid of Starmer, God forbid it be David Lammy. So if they got rid of Starmer, who would be your choice?
I think it would be Wes Streeting.
Yeah,
I think. Look, he's doing well.
He don't even stand up to the striking doctors.
No, he doesn't. But he's not doing too badly with his brief. I think he is doing. He's actually seems to be doing something with the NHS. Whether it's all the glitz and glory that he tells us it is, I don't know. But look, he appears like a statesman. He talks like one. He seems to have a vision. And I think he would probably be the best bet for Labour if they wanted to survive.
You know, it's the left-wing backbenchers you've got to stand up. That's why I don't.
Well, that's why Rayner will probably be voted as leader.
Well, yeah, it's the same as Farage. Unless he takes on the blob, and I can't see, he's not going to be any better than Starmer, because you've got to take the blob on.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to get rid of, because they're the ones who run the government.
They're civil servants. Yeah. There's no. I mean, I think that everybody thinks that governing. Labour certainly thought that governing was easier, didn't they? Because they'd seen it being done badly, and they got in there and didn't have a clue what to do, and they've never managed to get anywhere. I mean, it's just crazy to me. I just don't get it. They got into government and went, oh no, is this what it's like? And have failed ever since. Robert, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for calling in. So, Starmer, is he done for? Is he done for? Is this the final nail in his coffin? Or do you think he'll survive? Should he resign? Should he show some integrity and resign? Does this bother you, the Mandelson stuff? Maybe it's just us lot. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Quick break, back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Talk Back and that's what I want you to do, is to tell me if you think Starmer is finally done for. All of the front pages are questioning now whether he could possibly survive the scandal of Mandel. So can he survive Mandelson? That's the question. Whether Mandelson survives or not, that's now up to the Met and up to the Lords, deciding whether they're going to change the law in order to remove his peerage from him, because although he's resigned from the Lords, he still gets to call himself Lord Mandelson. He's being now described as a traitor to the country. Gordon Brown is livid, absolutely furious that Mandelson seemed to boast that he played a part in Gordon Brown resigning and the downfall of the government. So he's boasting about that. Finally got rid of him, I think, is what he sent to Epstein. But other things that he sent to Epstein appear to be highly confidential financial issues. And this was at the time when there was a banking crisis. There was a huge, you remember all the banks went bust and we as a taxpayer had to bail them out and all of that. So all of those things were going on. There had to be a huge bailout of the euro as well to prevent that currency from collapsing. And Mandelson was passing on, according to these emails that he can't remember sending, that it seemed like he was passing on this information to a billionaire paedophile and on to JP Morgan, which is an American bank. So Mandelson may well have to answer to that. He won't. I don't think he'll have to answer to any. I think he should go to Congress and tell them what he knows about Epstein. They were best buddies for a while. They were great mates. Some people are even suggesting, that I've been reading today, that he had a bit of a crush on Epstein. But yeah, so all of that, and the money that Epstein gave him and his boyfriend at the time, now husband, can't remember that either. So I don't think he'll answer for those things. I don't think anybody, sadly, will answer for those things. But he may well have to answer for the emails that appear to show him sending secret, confidential information to his paedophile friend. He may well have to answer to that. That's up to the police. But I would like to know if any of this has made you think worse about Keir Starmer. I know that's a difficult question because there's not a lot of people think well of Keir Starmer at the moment or of this government. Just look at the polls and you'll see that there's not a lot of us who are supporting him or his government right now. But has this made you think, this really does show how weak our Prime Minister is? This really does. This is proof, if we needed it, that he's weak. That maybe even low on integrity. Because he did know that Mandelson had been friends with a paedophile, which, if you then give him the top job, at the very least for me, shows a lack of compassion for the victims of that paedophile, right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that would show that Mandelson didn't have a very good choice in friends or very high integrity. In fact, it was known that Mandelson didn't have very high integrity. From one of his jobs, he was taking loans. That's why he had to resign at one point, because he took a great big fat loan that he didn't tell anybody about, and all sorts of things. So that was low in integrity. So why put somebody who is low in integrity, had friends with a paedophile, into the White House? Unless he thought that Mandelson was capable of speaking Donald Trump's language. Who knows? Let's go to Sarah, who's in Liverpool. Hello, Sarah. Good morning.
Good morning, Petrie.
What a mess this is, eh?
This couldn't get any messier if they were doing mud wrestling.
I know. Shocking, isn't it?
It is. I mean, to be perfectly honest, this has been one boil that has been waiting to burst, Epstein. And to be perfectly honest, if anyone's been looking at politics over the last, 30 years, you'd know how dodgy Mandelson is anyway.
Exactly.
And anything to do with him, you think, what on earth would you have him? He's been proven to be bad news with Blair and Brown. And you just go, you are toxic, you can stay right well away.
Why put him in the White
Biden.
House? I mean, that just it makes my head explode. It's like, as you said, he's toxic. He was known as the Prince of Darkness. He was fired or had to quit from every job he ever had from with Gordon Brown, and nobody could look at him and go, "That's a great CV."
Certainly not. I mean, and we had a perfectly good ambassador who had connections with the Trump administration anyway. They were friendly with various members, including the president himself. God help her. But what did they do? They go and change him over. What people have got to realise is that Mandelson and McSweeney moulded Starmer from being this academic, bookish lawyer to being, now the Prime Minister. And you've got to take a look at his judgment. He was in their debt, basically. And if you take a look in the round, all the decisions that have been made in the last 12 months, but especially in the last few weeks, you go, who's wagging the dog? And especially over the Gorton by-election, I took a look at it and I thought, he knows damn well that Andy Burnham was one for Mandelson and certainly one for McSweeney. And he couldn't, and I've got a very funny feeling that Burnham couldn't stand Mandelson at all. He knew what bad news he was. So I get the feeling there was wheels within wheels when it came to the NEC, and that's it. Well, we're going to make sure Andy Burnham keeps well in political Siberia, because I am not going to let him go anywhere near my job. However, matters have come to a head, and I'm afraid, Prime Minister, if I was your missus, I'd be booking the Pickford vans, because I don't think he's going to last till Easter. And to be perfectly honest, this has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of times when this Prime Minister has not listened to anyone who's given him counter advice. I mean, the idea of being in politics, and if you're Prime Minister, you've got to listen to both sides of an argument. And you've got to put forward.
He only listens to Morgan
and the national interest.
I think he only listens to Morgan McSweeney. That's what I think.
And he loves Morgan McSweeney. I mean, McSweeney, he would sacrifice himself for, because he is his creator. Think Frankenstein a monster and Starmer's the monster. Is co-creator, put it that way, because Mandelson was busy pulling all the strings. And if you take a look at, there was one particular contract that's for. There's one contract supposed to be for data and information. It's from an American firm.
Palantir.
That's it, Palantir. And
that's getting into bed with the devil.
Mandelson.
I know.
And his best pal, one of them in the cabinet, is Wes Streeting. So you've got to think about his judgment.
Yeah, that's true.
And looking at what was going on at PMQs today, I mean, you didn't need to be a psychologist or an expert in body language to know that this was a dead man walking. And looking at the Labour backbenchers they were the real backbenchers. I'm talking about the likes of Ian Byrne and them. They were blazing. They were going, we've told you that these two were no marks, as we say in Liverpool. We told you they were toxic. We told you that everything that you were putting in place, which no doubt Mandelson and McSweeney, it was obvious it was all coming from Mandelson and McSweeney, because I'll be perfectly honest, even though he's supposedly an intelligent man, Keir Starmer may be clever, but he is not intelligent, and he's certainly got no political nous. I mean, he's only been in Parliament, 10 years? 11 years. So that is really no time at all for your apprenticeship. You really should start on the council, on your local council, and then get into Parliament. That way you know the ropes. He's never done that. He just went straight from being DPP into Parliament. Totally wrong. And when when he saw somebody coming up on the rails, he was saying, "You are wrong." Doesn't matter if it's the backbenchers saying, "What the hell do you think you're playing at? This is wrong. What you're doing is, immoral. It's unethical. It's this. Why are you picking on the most vulnerable? Why are you doing this? Why are you being so pig-headed over the budget when we can see what's going on in the country? Why don't you admit that these policies are wrong?" But anyone who says you're wrong gets kicked out, gets suspended for 3-6 months or whatever, and that he thinks that's perfectly all right. That is not how to behave. You're supposed to listen to people who are criticising policy and going, "This is wrong. Take a look at what's going on." Even though I can't stand Blair, even he had the decency to listen when people said, don't do it, this is unthinkable, you don't do this, you're going to get a caning. But Starmer is too damn arrogant to think, and he is a dead man walking.
Has he ruined the reputation of Labour as a potential government in the future?
What he's done, I wouldn't quite go as far as that. What I'd say is the one thing that is a dead set is this blue Labour lark is totally and utterly dead in the water. That is just dead duck. And what's needed is you need somebody who's got brains, an experienced politician, and looking at some of those, I wouldn't say most of them are. Yeah. And we need somebody, to be perfectly honest, we do need somebody who's been around the block, who know in and out of Parliament for a good while. And the only person who could figure that, and I'm not being biased because where I live, I would say the only one who could square up and try and rebuild the party is Andy Burnham. But unfortunately, the NEC's blocked him. But however, even though the NEC may have blocked him,
it was Starmer that blocked him, wasn't it? Because he had the casting.
It's basically Starmer and his clones, yeah. But I've known it. There was one case, 2015 election. In fact, I know it was my MP, actually. It was found that the NEC was going to put somebody who didn't know a thing about the local area and the people into that particular into the Bootle constituency, and our local MP, he turned around and said, who's now the MP, I should say, he was the one who fell asleep during the budget. He turned around and said, "Hey, hang on a minute. You've got to have somebody who knows the people. What the hell do you think you're playing at? This is wrong. No. We've got the best person for the job." And Peter Dowd got the nod, after a while, got the nod and became the MP. Now, from what I can see about this, Starmer, who the person Starmer has chosen, it's another little girl, and I don't mean to be sexist, but it's true. It's one of his little clones who will be yes, no, and three bags full Prime Minister. And that's not what we need. We need somebody who'll go...
Well, he'll lose it. He'll lose it. It's gone. There's no chance of... Andy Burnham could have won it.
No chance now. I mean, he's really gone and thought he's thinking of his own... Put it this way. He was thinking of his own survival. And
exactly that.
His personal interest, not the national interest, and not the interest of those people in Gorton and Denton. And this is wrong.
I agree.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, this is... He's obviously never seen the play by C.P. Taylor Good, or even seen the film. I mean, good grief, the DVD's around enough. And he could have quite easily seen that, how somebody who was academic and bookish got seduced by evil, basically. And he ended up going down the dark path. Now, he mightn't end up being a mass murdering Nazi, which is what happened in the play. But this is somebody who's gone down the dark path and sold his soul to Bandleson.
Well, they all get a taste of power, Sarah. That's the problem. But you're absolutely right. He put his own interests before country and before party when he blocked Andy Burnham. And he said that he would... do you remember? Never do that. It would never be party first. It will always be country first. And he's let both the country and the constituents and his party down by being more concerned with his own survival than allowing Andy Burnham anywhere near that by-election, which, by the way, I believe he would absolutely have won. Sarah, brilliant to talk to you. You always got your finger on the pulse of politics. I love it. Quick break. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi, good morning to you. This is Talk, and this is Talk Back with me, Petrie. And we're talking at the moment about Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, in case you need reminding, and whether he can survive this Mandelson scandal. Mandy Scandy, I think it should be called from now on. This Mandy Scandy. Can he survive it? Should he resign? And if you're a Labour voter, a Labour supporter through and through, is this just making you want to weep? Is this making you go, oh God, why can't you just do something right? Because look, he put this man, Peter Mandelson, into one of the highest offices in the world, British ambassador to America. And now it's come back to bite him. We're going to learn some of the vetting process, although Sir Keir Starmer says, well, he lied to me. And like I said, that's not a very good vetting process. Yeah, are you still friends with that paedophile rapist? No. Okay. Right? I mean, that's not... I don't know what kind of... I want to see what the vet... I want to know why. I literally would love to sit down, mind you, I have sat down with Keir Starmer. Goodness me. I have interviewed him face to face. He is an oxygen vacuum, to be perfectly honest with you. I try, before the interview, it's a little bit awkward when people come into the studio and you try to sort of chat if there's a break there. And so I went, oh, it was before he must have been leader, but he wasn't Prime Minister. Nothing. No charm, no charisma, no conversation. Looked at me like I was some kind of freak of nature. And I just thought, God, I'm bored already. I haven't even opened a microphone yet. Bored. Anyway, I can't remember what the interview was about because it was so dull. But he was literally an oxygen vacuum. I just felt all the air leave the studio as he walked in. So, yeah, I've not got a lot of time for Keir Starmer, either as a person that I've met or as a politician. But this looks bad. This is a lack of either wit, intelligence, or dignity, credibility. I mean, the list goes on, really, to put a man like Mandelson in that very, very senior position. Is it the old boys club? I don't know. Loads of messages coming through. Elena said, I think with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, there's more hiding behind the door. I agree. We are at the foothills to be discovered. Like him, what a sorry shame for the late Queen. God rest her soul. Maybe it was a godsend she's not here to experience the fallout from all of her son's mess that was left behind. I agree. Although her paying off Ghislaine Maxwell has made some people think that was a pretty silly thing for her to have done. According to the government's own website, the Deputy Prime Minister is classed as more important than any other minister, indeed, and is briefed the same as the PM and is privy to all decisions. So, why is it that Angela Rayner criticising Starmer's decisions now when she was the Deputy PM when Starmer made the decision to give Mandelson that job? Oh, I don't know. What's it called again? Oh, gosh. Hypocrisy. I think that's what it's called, isn't it? No, I don't know. Another message here. Can't quite make the name out, but it says, I'd love Starmer to stay until the next election, regardless of what happens. It will give other parties an easier ride to power. So not because you like him. No. An easier ride to power whilst that evil man is running the show. The country is on its knees due to this imbecile. Yeah, well, it's just the fact that we don't know what he stands for. I don't know what he is, who he is, what is he? Don't know. Anyway, so I've been asking for a Labour supporter to call, and Paul in Stockport has answered my call. Paul, great to speak to you. You're a Labour supporter through and through?
I am, yeah. I remember this. I've paid the subs to the Labour Party.
Oh, have you?
For a long period of time, yeah. And I regularly see Jonathan Reynolds in our constituency, and I used to work for the same authority as Angela.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're proper Labour. You used to go and help them stuff envelopes and post.
I saw him at the band contest. I saw him at the band contest as recent as last June. I think it was June, Whit Friday, wasn't it? And I was thinking, great, you know, we've got with us that horrible Boris and all there. What a great start, nice sunny day. And it's just gone from bad to worse, hasn't it?
So they've completely lost you now, have they?
Yeah, I mean, my family's always brought Labour, working class. All my friends are, and people are absolutely sick of what's going on in this country. And it's not just what's on today, is it? Let's be honest.
No, I think this is an excuse. I think this is an excuse that a lot of people have been looking for, a lot of his backbenchers have been looking for to get rid of him. I think if he was doing a good job, they'd all be coming out and supporting him and saying, look, he couldn't possibly have known, Mandelson's a creep, you know, blah, blah, blah. He lied. But they're not doing that.
No, but, I mean, just rewind a bit. I mean, when he went to America and he was putting out this invitation, how stupid he looked.
How embarrassed were you with that? I was so embarrassed. It was awful.
Cringeworthy. Yeah.
I was so embarrassed.
And I mean, we've had it last week. He was sucking up to China, all that, the Chagas Islands away. You know,
for no reason.
Yeah, there's been so much now that he's just completely weak. He's finished. He'll be out of a job by Friday. I know for a fact he will. I do, and I hope he is. As a Labour, well, what I'm scared of now, I don't feel safe now under Starmer, and I haven't for some time. And I've spoke to my friends about this. Anything could happen, really, and he don't look like he's got a grip on anything.
Yeah.
He looks frightened. Today, he looked like he was going to burst into tears.
He did, actually. He did. He looked like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar, didn't he?
He was shaking.
Yeah.
He was shaking, Petra.
It's weak. I mean, he is weak.
To say this guy was a top lawyer in the...
I know. It was QC. He was Queen's Counsel, for goodness sake. I mean, he was a barrister. He used to have to stand up and... Can you imagine him as your barrister? You're definitely going to go down, right? I mean...
Absolutely.
I mean... I can't imagine him some great, you know, soliloquy of your innocence, or, you know, these great poetry that these barristers come out with. Can't imagine any of that. How did he have that job?
God knows, but he's just a yes man and what have you, and this Mandelson thing. I mean, he was so desperate to get someone to, with Trump, like him, to sort of like soften him up and all that. He took that risk, and it's absolutely gone, completely wrong for the country. He's done so much damage, that guy, today, to the whole country and the whole politics. I'm having feel like walking away and just, I feel empty at the moment because I have campaigned for Labour.
Yeah, you've worked hard.
I don't want idiot to get in Farage now and cause havoc.
That'll be down to Keir Starmer if he does. Yeah,
and that's what we're risking now, because there's going to be some turmoil now. He's going to be out of a job. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Weekend, he'll be looking for a job.
Do you think he can't? That he won't stay until the by-election?
Well, the Labour Party, they don't seem
they
to
don't tend to get rid of people. No.
No, so it's, you know, it's not like the Tories. But if he's got any self-respect left, I think he's just going to go to Parliament tomorrow or Friday and say, look, I'm sorry, I've done this, and I'm going to walk away.
This is egregious, isn't it? This really is an egregious thing that he did. I mean, people are not really understanding quite how disastrous this really is, both for the country, an embarrassment for the country, and for him personally. That
performance today, I mean, I don't like Tories anyway, but Kemi Birmingham today, she's absolutely tore into pieces. And it was embarrassing. He looked like he was going to burst into tears. And you look at him and think, hang on, this guy's in charge of our country.
I know.
He's supposed to be keeping us safe.
Who would you want to see? Who would you want to see replace him? I'm not so sure about Angela Rayner. There's something about her that I don't trust.
No.
And I can't put my finger on it, but I don't trust her intentions.
Well, there's one or two people around Ashton what are saying a bit unhappy that she bought that house 200 miles away because she bought it and then had to face the tax thing, but she'd have been spending more time. You know, the problem is, and the same with Reynolds as well. I used to see Reynolds in my local pub having a pint.
That's the point of a local MP, right?
We don't see him, and if you go to the surgery, which is in the local Labour club, or it's one of his assistants now. Any people have got issues about housing and stuff like that, they don't see the MPs now.
That's shocking. That is shocking.
I think that they're not on the front line anymore.
No. They don't want to do the work. I don't think they want to do the work
now, and they've changed.
Yeah, I agree.
Not for the better.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Starting to suss them out now.
Do you think the West Streeting would be good? Or would you like to see Andy Burnham? I mean, Andy Burnham's now been blocked, of course, but...
Yeah, I'm not sure, really. I mean, I do like Andy Burnham because I think he's
proved himself, right?
And he's done a good job for Greater Manchester.
Yeah.
He has, to be fair.
No, he has. I agree. And he's done the work, right? I can appreciate that. He's done the work at the, and learnt the trade, if you like. And he's, like you said, he's really done a good job with Manchester. And as I was saying earlier to Sarah, that was just an act of selfishness by Keir Starmer. That was not putting the country first or the party first.
Not.
It was putting himself first.
But I think Andy Burnham, if he makes a mistake, he'd stick his hand up and say, look, I'm not perfect. I think I made a mistake, or I'm not sure about this. But all he talks about, like he was today, processes, I've referred it to, he don't actually say anything.
No.
You actually listen to him. He don't put any confidence in you. He's not assertive. He's just not got a leader quality in him.
No, like I said, I promise you, when I met him, when he came into the studio for me to interview another broadcaster, I was like, what's all the fuss about? It was a vacuum, a personality vacuum. I honestly, I've only one other person I've met like that is Ian Duncan Smith. So each other.
Quiet man.
I know, Paul. Listen, I'm sorry that they've let you down. I hope that you find the leader that you want, and I think we all need a good government, like you said, to stave off a worse one. And I'm with you 100% on that. So I want to see Labour do well. I want to see anybody do well, but not at the moment, and not under this leadership. Right, a quick break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is Talk and it is Petrie. My voice is getting deeper and deeper as I get towards the end of the hour. Just a moment ago, I was talking to Paul in Stockport, who talked about Kemi Badenoch tearing in to Keir Starmer. So I thought, well, if you didn't hear it, perhaps you'd like to. So here you go.
The whole House will be disgusted by the latest revelations about Jeffrey Epstein. All of us want to see his victims get justice. But the political decision to appoint Epstein's close associate, Peter Mandelson, as Britain's ambassador to Washington goes to the very heart of this Prime Minister's judgment. When he made that appointment, was he aware that Mandelson had continued his friendship even after Epstein's conviction for child prostitution?
Mr. Speaker, let me start where I must, with the victims of Epstein, and all of our thoughts are with them. Can I also say our thoughts are with all those who lost jobs, savings and livelihoods in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash. To learn that there was a cabinet minister leaking sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 crash is beyond infuriating. And I am as angry as the public and any member of this House. Mandelson betrayed our country, our Parliament and my party. Mr. Speaker, he lied repeatedly to my team when asked about his relationship with Epstein before and during his tenure as ambassador. I regret appointing him.
Yeah, we didn't quite get to the point where he actually admitted that he knew of Epstein continuing a friendship with Mandelson. But yeah, it's all fluff and nonsense, isn't it? It's all fluff and nonsense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Let me read you some of your messages. Tony has said Starmer should call a general election and then resign because none of them are good enough to hold office. I'm 50 years old and this is the worst government I have ever known. I'm not even sure they're governing. I mean, what does it even... I mean, they're not even doing anything. Tony, there you go. Thank you for that. And Ernie says, hi, Petrie. The world is an entirely different place since the internet. Now there's nowhere to hide. Back in the day, we had two main TV channels where the general public got all their information and the politicians basically controlled them and got away with all sorts, like the expenses scandal. Now this generation... hang on a minute, that keeps moving. Now this generation won't be controlled. They can see what politicians are up to, feathering their own nests and giving us the occasional treat to keep us on side and not really caring enough about the people who put them in those privileged positions. It wasn't like this in the early days. Politicians were honourable and looked up to, and now most of them are just sheep following the party line, whether they agree with it or not. Politicians also used to resign. Do you remember those days? When they got caught doing something wrong, there'd always be the politician standing at the gate with his wife saying, I'm taking time off to spend more time with my family. That's what they used to do. Now they don't resign. They've got all cocky. They never resign now. But I wonder if he will go. Gary says Starmer definitely should go now. He should have gone long ago. And this one's from Tony, says that I've heard that Mandelson can't resign because there's no legal framework. But didn't Tony Benn relinquish his title legally in the 1960s? I don't think you can. Once you've got a peerage, it's a peerage for life. And it can only be taken from you by this sort of archaic